Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the format out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for the day comes from Jacob, and it is, what do you think about some type of scope damage system in Battlefield? The Coyote red dot sight is the most used scope. What if in the next Battlefield title, their RDS had a chance to break when an explosion happened next to you? Adding durability to the scopes could make customization more interesting. I have heard this suggestion bounce around every once in a while because at its core, it's an interesting idea. You're absolutely right. Everyone uses the Coyote red dot sight if they have access to it. You know, maybe they'll use the normal RDS or the Cobra, but as soon as they unlock that in a battle pack, they're going to use it because it just gives you the most field of view. It hardly obstructs your vision. It gives you great line of sight of everything in front of you, and it's just clearly the best red dot sight if you want to be successful, if you want to have the best customization on your weapon. And so if there was a system in place, much like you described, where if an explosion happened next to you, or maybe you got shot a couple of times, there would be a likelihood where your scope would break, or it would at least crack or something like that, where it would be a little bit more difficult to see through it, and it wouldn't be that awesome red dot sight that everyone gravitates towards, and it has some negative quality to it. And so personally, I really like this idea. Maybe this would be the thing that would get people to try out the different customization in the game. Instead of only just using the red dot sights, which are quite flimsy, they would maybe try to use the higher optics like the ACOG scopes or the 3.4 scopes. They would just be a harder, durable customization, and while yeah, they're gonna have some drawbacks because you're gonna suffer a little bit in close encounter combat, they may start to be the preferred scope of choice for a lot of gamers because they don't have that negative attribute of constantly breaking all the time. That could be a very interesting system. The thing is, though, is that we may just be overcomplicating things. In the next Battlefield title, instead of introducing a brand new concept, this brand new idea of having durability to your customization, well, why not go the way that Hardline went, where they just didn't add the Coyote scope in the game to begin with? They have a wide variety of different RDSs, and I would say that their customization diversity is a hell of a lot better, especially with the scopes, because you don't have a clear winner. Yeah, some have some strengths and weaknesses to them, just within the RDSs themselves, but there isn't like this clear dominant choice. I was gravitating over towards the Cobra sight. Many of my friends were gravitating over to others because there wasn't this clear dominant winner that gave you awesome field of view and had no drawbacks to it. Maybe that's the way that they should approach it in the next game. And so while I really like the concept of it, it would force you to think about your customization completely differently from what we have right now, but it may be just overcomplicating things to solve an issue that would be easily resolved by just changing a couple things here and there. The next question comes from Brian, and it is, do you think that Rocket League has room to be the next big esports game, or do you think it will end up failing? It's really hard to say at this point, because Rocket League, for all of its popularity, it has only been out for a month now, and while it's still maintained a ridiculously large player base. I was playing just yesterday, and there was 130,000 people playing concurrently. It was ridiculous. This game is an indie game. It's been out for a month, and people are still in the hundreds of thousands playing it every single day. There are not a lot of games out there that can tote that, especially for a multiplayer game. There are a few AAA titles that can even sustain that type of player base for an entire month. The thing is, though, is that it's still way too early to tell if this is going to become the next big esports game. It's got a lot going for it. I think that the trifecta here is that it's easy to learn. Anyone can jump on in and have fun with it. It's difficult, almost impossible to master. Like, when you watch the pros, you are blown away by the maneuvers and the skill of these guys. Like, it is insane. But the third thing going for it is that it's really fun to watch these pro players. You look at every other esports out there, and they have that type of dynamic going on. Counter-Strike, League of Legends, and Dota have that type of dynamic. Yes, you could argue that some of them are not the easiest things to jump on into, but you look at Dota and League of Legends, there's only 4 abilities that you have to manage. Yes, there is a huge skill gap in the game. Yes, there is a lot to learn, but that's the hard to master category right there. It's relatively easy to jump on into. At its core, it's very simplistic in its mechanics, much like Rocket League, but there is a gigantic skill gap gap, which honestly makes the game so satisfying to watch. That's the third thing. All of these games are a hell of a lot of fun to watch from an esports standpoint, and I think that is something that Rocket League has as well. And so while it is way too early to tell at this point, like the game is still in its infancy, in the next couple of months, if pro teams start to come up and build, and there's prize pools and tournaments that are around it, I could see this taking off. I'm crossing my fingers because I love the game. I love watching it. Like, I spent like an hour watching a pro player and it was mesmerizing. I think a lot of people, if they did see pro players, they would be blown away by it and they could see like, yeah, I could definitely see this becoming a next big esports. We're gonna have to wait and see, but I am crossing my fingers. The next question comes from Patrick, and it is, do you think that a future Battlefield game should have a co-op mode like Insurgency where 8 or so players try to compete against objectives fighting against bots? I am not opposed to that whatsoever, and honestly, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of having some sort of co-op thing in the game where you can test your skills against bots, or at least maybe just casually try out new loadouts, or just get comfortable with the game and the mechanics so that when you jump into the multiplayer, you don't feel like a fish out of water, you're not just flopping around like a wet noodle, and you're going to be able to at least compete against normal, real players. The funny thing about this is that this was a feature back in Battlefield 2. I remember playing Battlefield 2 when I first started. I would jump in and start playing the single player because I didn't actually have a single player. Single player was just you against bots, and that was a really good way for me to get acclimated and adjusted to this new experience. And then when I jumped into the multiplayer, I felt a lot more comfortable with the different systems and dynamics that were a part of the Battlefield franchise. It was a great introduction to the game. And so to have that in the next big Battlefield game could be an amazing substitute, even for something like the single player. If they got rid of the single player completely and just had the co-op like we had back in Battlefield 2, I would not be opposed to that. It probably will never happen. I know that sounds bizarre to you guys because we play it for the multiplayer. It sounds crazy to buy the Battlefield franchise for the single player, but EA has run the numbers. They understand that they're gonna sell way more copies if there is a single player experience, but who knows? Maybe with the way that they've been doing things with Star Wars Battlefront, which isn't gonna have a single player, just co-op in the multiplayer, maybe that's the direction that things are heading. It might not be the case because Star Wars is gonna sell millions and millions of copies just by its name. They really don't need a single player to sell the game, but that could be an indication for the next Battlefield title that we may have some AI bots and some cooperative missions, much like in Star Wars Battlefront. And so while I really like the idea, clearly you like the idea, there's many Battlefielders out there that would like to have an AI bot or a cooperative game mode just to jump in and test their skills. It'd be infinitely better than the test range. It's kind of hard to say at this point if that's ever going to happen for the next big Battlefield game. Solid question though. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.